So after the Civil War, the name was no longer needed as a tool to find torn away loved ones. And now the name could be a source of pride. So Jim's son, Emmanuel, my great-great-grandfather, taught his children to be proud that their name had belonged to a president and to make the most of that legacy now that they had the chance. So he added to the credo, and it became, always remember, you're a Madison. You come from a president. And that was the credo for the next 2 generations until my grandfather, my beloved Gramps, who was born free. He was Emmanuel's grandson. He was proud that his father and grandfather and other enslaved ancestors had overcome enslavement. So Gramps added 2 important words, African slaves. So the credo became, always remember, you're a Madison. You come from African slaves and a president. So for the last 100 years, the credo has reminded us that we're not just descendants of a president, we're descendants of enslaved people too.
While we don't have marked graves of the ancestors at Montpelier, like with tombstones with names and dates, we have found the ancestral cemetery of the enslaved Americans who lived, worked, and died at Montpelier. And we've found it all in one spot. It's one area that for years, earlier archaeologists had found these depressions in the ground. And originally it was thought there was maybe 38 to 45 graves in this one area, but we've recently done ground penetrating radar. And what we discovered is there are hundreds of graves in this location. And what it makes us realize, it's this spot that's not just down the hill from the main house is probably where any member of the enslaved community during the Madison era who passed away was buried there.
When enslaved individuals died, somewhat paradoxically, that was one of the moments where the enslaved community had the most control over their lives. So through death, they controlled their day, that ceremony, that ritual. And enslaved people didn't always have control over their daily rituals. But with funerals, most slave owners, not all, but most, did not interfere with mortuary rituals, as far as we can tell. So for an enslaved individual, when they died, whoever their close family were, hopefully were at hand. And I say hopefully because in some cases, the enslaved families had been separated over distance from sales, but your closest relatives would come to care for the body, undress the body, clean the body. This was work that was often done by women, and lay the body out. Especially in the South, you wanted to bury the body as soon as possible. Very often then that evening you would move to bury the body, but the funeral itself might occur days, weeks, months later, when people from different plantations and other enslaved communities were able to get word of the death and were able to travel to that plantation. And as you can imagine, all of these events that I'm saying as if enslaved people had control of their daily lives, the reason why it worked is because these funerals, these memorials, these commemorative events were often held at night. And very often at midnight, in fact, when enslaved people, for the most part, were not in the fields working or not in the houses working and had some control over their own lives.
We're gonna